No money exchanged and no sanctions loosened. The United States hailing the power of diplomacy and alliances in the biggest East-West prisoner exchange since the Cold War.
A total of 24 detainees freed, 16 by Russian aid by the U.S. and its allies. Among them, 3 high-profile American prisoners who are expected home in the coming hours.
This is their first photo after being released. Evan Gershkovich, Alsu Kurmashiva, and Paul Whelan. Now, later, another snap of them with U.S. officials on the plane heading home.
It says a lot about the United States that we work relentlessly to free Americans who are unjustly held around the world. It also says a lot about us that this deal includes the release of Russian political prisoners. They stood up for democracy and human rights. Their own leaders threw them in prison. The United States helped secure their release as well. That's who we are in the United States.
The journey to freedom was long and complex. Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich was arrested in Russia in March last year for espionage and was starting a 16-year jail sentence. Marine veteran Paul Whelan had been similarly sentenced for spying. He was the longest-held American detainee in Russia, more than 5.5 years. The swap deal involved 7 countries negotiating in secrecy for more than a year. The Kremlin said it wanted to bring Russian captives home.
Much attention has been on the first person stepping off the plane in Moscow. Vadim Krasikov is being called a linchpin for the swap deal. He was greeted by President Vladimir Putin, who apparently personally demanded Krasikov's release, calling him a patriot. Krasikov is an assassin convicted of shooting to death in a park in Berlin a Georgian citizen of Chechen ethnicity. Germany's leader explained the justification for releasing him.
Das staatliche Interesse an der Vollstreckung der Freiheitsstrafe war in Abwägung zu bringen mit der Freiheit und Gefahr für Leib und in einigen Fällen auch des Lebens unschuldig in Russland inhaftierter Personen und zu Unrecht politisch Inhaftierter.
Well, let's speak now with Dr. Malcolm Davis, a senior analyst with the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. He's joining us this morning from Canberra. Dr. Davis, just how significant is this prisoner swap, and what do you think have led Putin to agree to this exchange now?
Oh, look, obviously it's significant in terms of the scale and the individuals involved in the actual prisoner exchange, particularly Gershkovich and Whelan. I think that, it's a positive development no matter which way you look at it. And clearly there's been a lot of work gone into this by the US State Department to get the deal through and get these people home and away from the Russian hands. So it's positive in that sense. I think what motivates it is really uncertain because, the Russians don't have any real credibility or influence in Western circles after their invasion of Ukraine and how they're conducting that invasion. So it's a bit of a mystery as to why this has happened now. But I think we should all be pleased and see this as a very positive development.
Just to be clear, Dr. Davis, this is not a breakthrough in US-Russia relations, is it?
No, it's not. I think that the situation between the US and Russia is going to continue to deteriorate. Clearly, the situation in Ukraine is a real threat to Western security. When you talk to European leaders as well as American officials, there is real concern that what emerges out of Ukraine is the risk of a direct Russian threat to NATO, a direct Russian attack on NATO in the next few years. And so key decision makers are preparing their countries for that prospect. I'm not seeing any evidence whatsoever of a rapprochement or a détente or a step back from the brink by the US and Russia or Europe and Russia. Things are going in the opposite direction.
Dr. Davis, just very quickly, reports suggest the swap was imbalanced, meaning Russia got more out of it than the US. Is that something you would expect in exchanges of this nature?
Look, Russia got some people back, Krasikov, for example. I don't see this as a gain by Russia. My concern is that Russia will see this as an opportunity to do the same thing again. So Americans, citizens in Russia are at risk of being basically grabbed off the street and thrown into prison on spurious charges because the Russians will feel they can try and gain benefits from hostage diplomacy. In that sense, I think the Russians' perspective on this is that they are probably going to try this again. And certainly, if I were the US government, I would be getting my citizens out of Russia for that reason.
Indeed, the sheer scale of this exchange really could set off a significant precedent, Doctor. Any concern about the risk for future negotiations or diplomatic strategies?
Well, I'm not seeing any future negotiations really on the cards. So long as Putin continues his war in Ukraine, so long as he continues to threaten the West, there's nothing really to talk about. I think that what we need to be doing is ensuring that Western citizens in Russia are basically secure and safe, ideally not in Russia. And I think that we need to be recognizing that Putin will try to exploit every perceived weakness in Western foreign policy and defense to his own gain. So we need to stand firm against that. But frankly, I wouldn't get your hopes up for some sort of peace negotiation or rapprochement leading to better relations between Washington and Moscow.
Dr. Davis, some of America's European allies, notably Germany for Krasakov, but also Slovenia, Norway, Poland, they made significant concessions to help secure the release of US citizens. I mean, I'm curious, what's in it for them?
Look, I think that that's a good question in the sense that I don't see this really leading anywhere in terms of contributing towards some sort of return to stability in the relationship between Russia on the one hand and the Western democracies on the other. We're in a period where Russia, together with China, are confronting Western democracies and challenging the established rules-based international order across multiple regions of the planet in a coordinated and determined and deliberate manner. And so this release of hostages by both sides is just one small footnote in that larger conflict that's ongoing and will continue to occur. So from the European perspective, I'm not sure what they've really gained from this. It's a tactical victory for the West by getting those people out. But at strategic level, the confrontation continues.
And Doctor, reports say Vice President Kamala Harris played a role in securing the prisoner swap deal. I mean, she'll be joining Mr. Biden later to greet the released prisoners. In the context of U.S. elections, just how significant is this hostage release for her political standing as she prepares for a presidential run?
I mean, the fact that she was involved in it, I think, is entirely expected. And I think that that will help in terms of her election prospects, I think, which are pretty good so far from what I'm seeing. So, she'll certainly use this hostage release as part of that ongoing election campaign, and any politician would. But I think that we shouldn't make too much out of that in regards to the broader election. This election has a long way to go. Things are going well for Kamala Harris at the moment. The question is, at what point does that boost to her fortunes begin to ebb away? And are we in for a tight race in November between Trump and Harris? It's really impossible to know at this early stage.
Understood. Thank you very much, Dr. Davis, for your time. Appreciate it. Appreciate you appearing on the show today. Malcolm Davis is Senior Analyst with the Australian Strategic Policy Institute.